Come with me, toy fans.
I have often spoken of my reverence for the Castle Grayskull playset from Mattel's Masters of the Universe toy line. It was one of my all-time favourite toys when I was a child, and it has appeared in many of our videos, even being chosen as our #1 vintage action figure playset. However, Snake Mountain hasn't been afforded the same amount of attention, until now. Snake Mountain is the home of the villainous Skeletor, the archenemy of He-Man. The mountain is located on the dark hemisphere of the planet Eternia, and it was depicted in the Filmation cartoon as a tall spire of a mountain with a secondary peak separated by red flowing falls, and the statue of a snake coiled around the main structure. But this cartoon interpretation bears little resemblance to the playset designed by Mattel. When I was a child, I was lucky enough to own the Castle Grayskull playset, but I never received Snake Mountain in my youth. I did, however, have several friends who owned the playset, which gave me ample opportunity to enjoy it. And while Snake Mountain, the evil stronghold of Skeletor, does have a certain charm, in my eyes it could never compete with Castle Grayskull. Hello Motu fans, my name is Tony and welcome back to the Analog Toys YouTube channel and the feature of today's vintage toy review, the Snake Mountain playset from Mattel's Masters of the Universe toy line. Mattel's Snake Mountain playset was not released at retail until 1984, by which time the Masters of the Universe toy line was into its third year on toy store shelves. In most cases, when a toy would appear in the He-Man and the Masters of the Universe cartoon, the animators were required to copy the look of the toy, but this is where Snake Mountain differs, because it appeared in the animated series before Mattel had finished the design for the eventual playset. And this is likely why the Snake Mountain toy bears little resemblance to the mountain depicted in the cartoon. Mattel instead opted to base Snake Mountain on a previous jungle playset design that had since been abandoned. I also have a theory that this original prototype playset was inspired by the action figure mini-comics, where in that mythology He-Man was a tribal warrior from the jungles of Eternia. But I have no way of proving this theory. It's worth noting that early on in the franchise's history, Skeletor's fortress was called Point Dread, but that location soon changed to become the home of the Talon Fighter.
Introducing Point Dread and the Talon Fighter. Comes with adventure book and story record with sound effects. Action figures sold separately.
Let's hear He-Man and Skeletor and the Point Dread stories.
I, Skeletor, will finally defeat He-Man!
I'll use the Talon Fighter to stop Skeletor!
In a flash, He-Man's hurled through space and time.
Surrender to the power of Point Dread's Talon Fighter!
You win, He-Man, but I'll be back!
Point Dread and the Talon Fighter with record and storybook. You have to put it together. Action figures sold separately from Mattel.
At first glance, I always found the sculpting for the exterior of Snake Mountain to be really confusing, and I wish Mattel had just chosen to call it Manny Faces Mountain due to all the different portraits incorporated into its facade. We have a wolf's face and a wolf's head, a snake, a bat, this thing that looks something like a purple gorilla, and finally the demon's face, which dominates one half of the playset. Manny Faces Mountain. Finding a mint and complete Snake Mountain playset today can be very challenging due to the number of easily broken parts. The most notorious of which are the shackles and chains, which are used to hold captured prisoners on this small edge. It is extremely common for these accessories to snap off at the base that plugs into the mountainside. However, Toy Polloi has once again produced an excellent video that shows you how to repair these. The process is quite fiddly, but I did use this method for repairing one of mine, and I'm really happy with the result. Snake Mountain also includes the same ladder that comes with Castle Grayskull, but this time the accessory is moulded in grey plastic. And much like Castle Grayskull, the Snake Mountain playset has also been designed in two halves, so the set can fold up to become an action figure carrying case, being held together with two plastic latches.
Is Snake Mountain ready to take on He-Man? Anytime!
Snake Mountain Battle Armor He-Man and Skeletor each sold separately. You put the mountain together. Batteries not included.
Is your serpent ready to strike? Yes! Come, He-Man. Come to Snake Mountain. If you dare.
Snake Mountain with Echo Microphone. New from the Masters of the Universe collection. Action figures each sold separately. From Mattel.
Now I know I'm probably going to get some hate for saying this, but the rest of the sculpting for the main structure is just terrible. It's poorly engineered and out of scale with the action figures. For example, this stone stairway is too narrow, and trying to balance a figure on here is an exercise in frustration. The evil tunnel at the base of the mountain is also far too small, with the action figures being incapable of fitting through. The bridge that snaps onto the front of the mountain is almost as fragile as the shackles and chains, and is also too narrow, meaning the only way the figures can cross the bridge is by sidestepping. Now when it comes to Castle Grayskull, the figures mainly interact with the features inside the playset. However, Snake Mountain has been designed so that the figures predominantly interact with the exterior of the playset, but unfortunately Mattel really didn't pull it off that well. Now let me explain what I mean. When a figure enters the castle through Grayskull's drawbridge, they are on the lower level, and by moving through to the far side they can access the elevator, which takes them up to the second level, where they can then move into the throne room, which is the most protected part of the castle. But with Snake Mountain, the figures start accessing the structure at this lower section of staircase, which is too narrow for them to walk or stand on. They then reach this rickety old bridge, which is once again too narrow, and then up another section of staircase that is, you guessed it, too narrow to negotiate. And all of this just to end up at the gateway to nowhere. It's just got no logic to it. I mean, why would a character move all the way up to the top of this mountain peak when there are only two possible outcomes? They're either going to get struck by the striking snake and flung backward through the gateway to nowhere, or Skeletor will activate the trapdoor that drops the figure into a conveniently placed capture net. Skeletor really needs some lessons in how and where to lay booby traps. The location of the trapdoor in Castle Grayskull made perfect sense, and He-Man could activate it right before the enemy captured the throne. But the trapdoor at the top of Snake Mountain, I mean, there's just no need for a character to go up there. It's the gateway to nowhere. Now before people accuse me of being too harsh on this playset, I'd better point out its one redeeming feature. I do think that the wolf-headed microphone is pretty cool. A single 9-volt battery powers the voice unit, which is located inside the playset. And when a child turned it on and spoke through the microphone, it would turn their voice into a scary voice of evil.
I am the voice of Snake Mountain.
A child could add to the fun here by manipulating the jaw of the demon face, so when they speak through the Wolf Echo microphone, it looks as though the mountain is talking. Beyond this, there really isn't much else going on inside this playset, and Mattel missed a major opportunity here by not including Skeletor's Bone Throne. Seriously, how much cooler would this playset have been if it had included the throne and table that we saw in the cartoon? As with most Masters of the Universe products, the box art is impeccable, with this particular piece being painted by William George. It's just a shame that the painting depicts Battle Armor He-Man easily standing atop of the staircase. There are a couple of variations on the packaging. In some versions the mountain is quoted as saying, "I am the spirit of Snake Mountain," and in others it says, "I am the voice of Snake Mountain." When the Snake Men figures were introduced in 1986, the mythology was reimagined, with Snake Mountain having been the fortress of King Hiss and his minions for the past 1,000 years.
Now, slithering out from the depths of Snake Mountain, the Snake Men, the lowest form of evil. Ratlor's evil head strikes Tongue Lashor, whose evil tongue lashes.
Snake, I'm ready for him.
But is He-Man ready for their King Hiss? When his skin comes off, his evil comes out. King Hiss, Tongue Lashor, and Ratlor, new from the Masters of the Universe, each sold separately from Mattel. Are you ready for this?
I do understand that many people have a nostalgic connection to Snake Mountain, and just by pointing out its shortcomings, I am not dissing your childhood. In my opinion, this is an iconic and highly coveted toy, but it always paled in comparison to Castle Grayskull. But if you love Snake Mountain, that's perfectly fine with me. Following the hugely successful release of Castle Grayskull in 1982, Snake Mountain had a lot to live up to, but the playset never quite reached the same level of perfection as its predecessor. The overall look was certainly atmospheric and creepy, but it lacked the cleverly thought out playability of the hero's playset, and no one can tell me otherwise.